Good morning, everybody. Brandon here for WX Live with another tropical update video. Today, we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Melissa once again. And very interesting video I have for you today. The storm is kind of defying all modeling, all forecast tracks right now. As you can see from the track or the satellite view above me, the storm is currently taking a quick run to the northeast, which was not in any of the modeling except for the GFS, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Still Tropical Storm Melissa at this point, max winds of 70 miles an hour. That is of the 5 a.m. Eastern update from the National Hurricane Center. I would suspect, based on the satellite imaging and everything I've seen, that the next update at 11 we will have Hurricane Melissa here in the Southern Caribbean. Okay, so we're going to start off taking a look at the satellite image here. This is the True Color satellite from the GOES-19 satellite right overhead. And as you can see, the system looks a lot healthier today, the most healthy it's looked in its entire lifespan. You can see that it's kind of starting to envelop its own kind of climate. Look at all these clouds racing around the system, all around. You can see these clouds. The mid-level clouds here. The whole area has now begun to rotate around Melissa, which is what happens with these tropical storms. They become very powerful low-pressure centers where the entire climate around them starts rotating. And this is the first time really, maybe a little bit yesterday, since the storm has been born, that we've seen this very organized kind of tropical features. The storm also is exploding right now, as you can see. You can see it a little better in the next satellite. But I did want to point out one thing in particular on this satellite image is if you look at these thunderstorms here over the Caribbean Sea that are firing up overnight, look, the thing about thunderstorms is they get really tall, right? And then the very tops of their thunderstorms, these winds right here, or these clouds, these little wispy clouds, can kind of tell you what's going on in the upper atmosphere where these thunderstorms reach. And you can see the tops of all of these thunderstorms are getting blown very quickly this way, which tells us that this storm is still being impacted by shear on this side. So it's definitely not as strong as it could be, but at this point it is becoming very powerful, very large, and at some point that little bit of shear, I think it's like 10 knots of shear, really isn't going to be affecting it very much, and it's just going to power right through it. Another thing to note on this satellite image, which I alluded to a little earlier in the video, is that the storm is currently racing in this direction, right? So it's currently going north, and there is no guidance, no model that had it doing that, except for the GFS earlier in the week had it doing that, and everybody wrote it off. So the GFS is biased, its physics aren't any good, yada, yada. And there it is racing to the north right now. And that's why it's so important to kind of pay attention to what's actually going on with the storm, as opposed to just looking at models all the time, because things like this do happen. Now, is it going to continue to go north? Probably not. You know, is it a wobble? Probably. But at this point, the convection center, if we kind of switch over to the other view here, you can see it doesn't have a well-defined eye yet, which I suspect that won't last very long. I suspect that eye is trying to form somewhere in here right now. And if you kind of look at the features of the storm, it's got this huge convection center here. And the difference between, you know, it going, you know, this way from this location and it going, you know, say this way from this location is really depends on where that kind of center of convection lands, right? That's one thing that models have always struggled with, is before a hurricane or a tropical storm gets its super defined core, that classic look you're seeing, which you're actually starting to see now, where these bands flying out, this nice beautiful tail it's got going on here. That's the more classic tropical storm hurricane look that we're used to seeing these storms make. But before that happens, the models have to try to guess where is the core going to be in this entire giant area of tropical moisture. And the difference between, you know, 50, 60 miles, you know, the core lands here instead of here or over here makes a huge difference in the forecast track when you're talking about an island of Jamaica that's you know, a quarter of the size of the entire tropical system is wide. So that's why kind of when you're dealing with these storms, you really have to watch them hour by hour on the satellite. You have to watch them, you know, on the radar to try to see where that core is going to form. Now, once that core does form and we get that beautiful structure, a lot of times the forecast tracks are pretty accurate. But at this early stage, where's that core going to form? That's basically the most important part, and models honestly struggle with that part all the time. So moving along here, this infrared satellite picture that you're seeing from the GOES-19, it's the same satellite from the True Color, but now you're kind of getting to see a little more of the nuance to it. You can see the most heavy area of convection is here. It does look like you have some pretty rapid circulation around this core here. So I am expecting sometime later today we are going to see some sort of eye form, and this is definitely going to be the center of the storm moving forward, in my opinion. Now, since you can see in a little better detail in the satellite image, it's not moving as much north as I originally thought. It's moving kind of northeast, but still most of the models that you'll see today kind of have this thing jogging like this and then taking a turn over Jamaica. Well, that's not really validating right now, as the storm is moving more northeast, in my opinion. The only model, which we'll look at here in a second, that I saw that kind of predicted this properly was the GFS. And the GFS kind of has it going like this and then turning out, kind of sparing the island of Jamaica a little bit for most of the wind damage. Unfortunately, they're still going to get several feet of rain, which is still going to have devastating impacts on the island, but at least we can spare them from the 150 plus mile an hour winds that would come with the Category 5 hurricane if it does make that early turn as the GFS predicts. Now, one thing about the GFS I'll say is that it does a better job once that storm gets organized, like I was talking about before, and has pretty much predicted this movement for the last 12 hours or so, and does have it kind of turning right off the coast of Jamaica. So we're going to look at our model guidance here in a minute. Okay, moving along to the National Hurricane Center's official forecast track. This is a 5 a.m. Eastern time on October 25th, Saturday morning. So it says the hurricane is currently centered here, just south of the island of Haiti, and is going to move due west to a little northwest over the coming days, and on Monday it's going to take a turn up and head into the Bahamas. Now, it's very interesting because this forecast track just came out about an hour ago, and based on the satellite imagery I'm seeing from the storm, I think it's going to be something a little more along these lines, unless what we're seeing right now is just a wobble. But we're going to have to definitely see. I'll be interested to see once they upgrade it to a hurricane and we get the next 11 a.m. advisory, what kind of shifts in the track of the storm that it takes. One thing to note about this forecast track cone, that it has narrowed a little bit as far as Wednesday and Thursday goes. Yesterday, the cone of uncertainty kind of enveloped this whole area of the Bahamas. Now it seems like they're pretty confident that just the southern half of the Bahamas will be affected by the storm. Now, one thing to remember, that this is not the impact cone, guys. This is not the impact cone, okay? So this is where the National Hurricane Center thinks the center of the storm could be on Wednesday or Thursday. Remember, this storm is very large. So I made a video yesterday talking about cruises to the Bahamas. Just because the center of the storm is here doesn't mean that Coco Cay or Nassau isn't going to be affected in the Bahamas. This storm is very large. I mean, even if it takes this path, they're going to be feeling effects in the Keys and Miami. Now, nothing crazy, nothing that requires evacuations or preparation. It'll just be thunderstorms and rain and things of that nature. But, if you're going on a cruise next week, just be aware that a tropical system will be passing through, and it will have impacts on your cruise. That's one thing I always like to point out, because I don't think the National Hurricane Center does a very good job with their graphics. You just have to remember, this is where they think the center of the storm may be. It is not the impact cone. It does not give you a very good feeling of how large the storm is in the impact area. One thing to note, though, if it goes this way and ends up all the way over here, there'll be almost no effects for the cruising part of the Bahamas up here. So you really just have to, keep in touch with your cruise company. Make sure you give them a call and see what they're going to do. A lot of times they won't cancel these cruises. They'll take you somewhere else, a day to sea over here. Another thing to think about too, which a lot of people were commenting on the video I made about the cruises yesterday, is, well, I'm going here, or I'm going down here, or I'm going just straight to Cosmos, well, it won't affect me. Well, you have to remember the ship is leaving from Miami, right? Or it's leaving from Cape Canaveral, or wherever it's leaving from, Jacksonville. In order to get you to Puerto Rico or the Eastern Caribbean or Dominican Republic, wherever it's going, it has to sail through this area, right? And that's the problem with this storm system, is it's moving so slowly and it's just meandering and it's huge, right? The impact of the storm is something like this right now. Okay. That's like, if you were a ship's captain, you probably wouldn't want to be anywhere in this circle right now, right? Because of the effects of the storm. So, and it's just moving so slowly. So if you're a captain of a ship, what are you thinking, right? Are you gonna, in order to get to Eastern Caribbean, are you going to go around Cuba and all the way here? No, like that would take forever. They wouldn't have that much time. Would you go here? No, because you're going to end up running into the storm anyways. So what they try to do a lot of the times is just kind of wait, right? And then see if the storm will go out. But this thing is moving so slowly, and finally generally after Tuesday, by the way, it picks up to like normal rate to where you don't have to worry about it. So I would say if you have a cruise going to the Bahamas or through the Bahamas some point between Monday and Friday and Thursday of next week, definitely be calling your cruise ship company and make sure that they have a plan in place and they're not going to cancel the cruise on you. All right, so getting back to the storm itself here, in the immediate danger of the island of Jamaica, the National Hurricane Center still thinks it's going to make a direct hit right here somewhere near Kingston, actually. And the latest modeling I've seen, we'll have to see if that bears out. But either way, it doesn't really matter. If it hits here, goes over the top, goes over the center, the impacts are going to be about the same. The National Hurricane Center right now is predicting over the next 4 days, 20 to 30 inches of rain for eastern Jamaica, to include Kingston. I mean, that is just an insane amount of rain. We've already had reports of deaths here in southern Haiti, southern Dominican Republic from flooding and landslides. The real big danger for the island of Jamaica right now, folks, is going to be flash flooding, mudslides, inland flooding, and if the storm goes to the south, storm surge flooding. If it kind of just grips here and goes this way, you're going to get some storm surge flooding on the north side of the island. But I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point, folks. If you're in Jamaica, your preparation should be done already. You should be bracing for this storm, and you will get major devastating impacts from the storm, life-threatening impacts, which have already happened in Haiti and Dominican Republic. All right, so to kind of take a look at the models here, this will be the first time this week that the GFS has appeared on the channel, just because it was so out to lunch lately. And but it kind of seems to be getting its act together now that we have a storm that's, you know, semi well put together. Okay, so this is the 0C 0Z GFS run. So you can kind of see the storm takes a little jog to the north, turns, and then starts beelining it towards Jamaica, right the eastern tip of Jamaica, and then right before it gets to the eastern tip of Jamaica, it strengthens and turns northeast, brushing the eastern side of Cuba, and then going into the southern Bahamas there, and then out to sea. Now, I think this is the most accurate of the weather models right now, simply because this is what's verifying right now. So this was from, you know, roughly, you know, 6-7 hours ago. This run was run, and they're currently doing the 6Z one right now. It's not finished running yet, so I didn't want to show it. But the this is what's verifying. So this is from 6-7 hours ago, and the storm is currently doing right now on satellite exactly what the GFS said it was going to do. It's taking a jog to the northeast. To my mind, get a beeline it right towards Jamaica, and then kind of do a turn to the northeast and hit the eastern side of Cuba and go out to sea. So if you guys are, you know, checking the models, don't count out the GFS yet. Now that it's more of a secure, formed, stable storm, the GFS is going to be a lot more accurate. Okay, so moving on to the Euro here. Same thing, basically, that it's been doing all week. The storm kind of takes this western jog, then turns to the northwest a little bit, goes right towards the island of Jamaica, takes a direct hit really near the Kingston area, and then up, kind of splits the gap between Haiti and Cuba, and then through the southern Bahamas and out to sea. So really, we have some good model agreements today. The real only part where they really differ is when it's going to take that northeast to north jog and start turning. The Euro wants to take it a little farther west than the GFS does before the turn, and the GFS kind of makes it beeline right towards Jamaica and then turns. So it'll be interesting to see which one plays out. Right now, the GFS seems to be the one that's verifying in real time. Okay, so taking a look at the HAFS B model. This is from the National Hurricane Center and NOAA. This is their model that uses the called a high data basin model. All the data from the Atlantic basin to kind of model and focus in on this one hurricane. I like this one for strength, not so much track. So we're coming up here 8 p.m. on October 25th. The storm, and very similar to the GFS, takes a more direct line towards the island of Jamaica, then does like a little western jiggle, and then kind of turns and goes right just east of Kingston area over the island. And it's interesting to note here that the lowest barometric pressure this model shows is 924, which in this case would be possibly a Category 5 hurricane hitting the eastern tip of Jamaica here on October 27th around 11 p.m. Eastern. So very interesting model run here. I do like the halves for intensity, not so much track, but it is interesting that it also differs from the Euro model, kind of going more on the track of the GFS here. Okay, and so here's some more interesting model runs to kind of look at. As you can see, the Euro, the members don't really agree with the very near future track of this storm. They all pretty much agree with the turn and swept up through the Bahamas and out to sea. But as you can see, if I get just 12 hours outside of the 12 hours into the future, you've got a really big spread of model members here. Some taking it further to the southwest towards Central America, some taking it almost directly towards Haiti, some splitting the difference. So we'll just let this run here so you guys can see. And just the further you get, you see the more spread it gets. Look how spread these ensemble members are on the Euro. I mean, they cannot decide, do they want to take the storm to the south of Jamaica first, which was kind of like the thinking earlier in the week. Do they want to take it directly to Jamaica? Do they want to, have it turn early? I mean, it's not, you got to look there. There's not an insignificant amount of members that want to turn this thing early before it hits Jamaica and take it up, kind of similar to what the GFS does. And there's a lot of members that want to take it south. Some members are going to do a direct hit. So it's going to be very interesting to see. The Euro seems to be having a problem figuring out what's going on with the storm. And I think it has a lot to do with the two models, the GFS and the Euro, are not really playing this high pressure system the same. The Euro is giving this high pressure ridge right here that's pushing the airflow down to the southwest. It's going to move the storm down to the southwest. It's giving it more credence than the GFS. The GFS basically thinks this high pressure system here doesn't even exist. And as soon as this little trough over the southern United States starts building ever so slightly, it wants to yank this thing up immediately and out to sea. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And we'll see that, by the way, in the models coming up, kind of how it treats those two different air features. Okay, so here's the GFS, and you'll see our high pressure ridge. This is 6 hours from the run. You'll see this high pressure ridge building right here. You'll see all the flow coming off that ridge is blowing. It's called northeasterly flow, but it's blowing to the southwest. I mean, I try to say things in a way that doesn't confuse people, but basically you need to know the flow is going this way around the high pressure ridge. So anything that interacts with the edge of this high pressure ridge is going to want to go this way. It's also fighting other forces like the natural tendency for hurricanes to want to gain latitude, things of that nature. So instead of pushing it down into Central America, it mostly will have a stalling or western effect on the storm. But you can see if I move it forward, the GFS just really doesn't care about that ridge at all. In fact, it has the ridge eroding somewhat back towards Honduras, or not Honduras, Mexico, and really just not having much of an impact. I mean, you can see the winds here aloft are to the southwest, but they are very weak. I mean, just look how weak the barbs here are on these winds. So the GFS, in the GFS's mind, this trough that's building over the southern United States is a much bigger influence in this weak ridge here to the west. And you can see that play out in the model where it just as soon as that trough just barely kind of reeks down over North Florida right there, and as soon as it gets anywhere near this hurricane, it just picks it up and moves it out to sea. Earlier in the week, I mean, we were seeing scenarios like this. If you see this this big trough building on Halloween Eve over the southern United States, it was all the way until this thing got way down here and way more powerful before it was able to move this storm out, because the models were giving a lot more credence to this high pressure system over Mexico. So it's very interesting to see. Now let's take a look at what the Euro kind of thinks of this whole thing, the differences between the two. So we're going to take this all the way back to 0 hours. So this is kind of what the conditions are like as the model was run about 6 hours ago. And you can see that the Euro puts a lot more credence in this high pressure ridge right here. It's farther to the east, and it's a bit stronger as well. So you can see we got two flags on this. You know, the winds aloft, two flags here, are a lot stronger to the southwest than they are on the GFS, and the ridge is farther to the east. So that's why on the Euro run, run, you can kind of see the hurricane gets influenced by that ridge a lot stronger. So here's the ridge right here. This is 18 hours, so 2 p.m. on October 25th. That ridge is still sitting way out here, and that flow to the southwest, and this hurricane is getting closer, which is kind of giving it, just kind of keeping it pinned down here to the west, even maybe a slight southwestern shift. So we'll see here what happens. And that's what plays out, right? The hurricane just kind of meanders to the west, even goes a teeny bit southwest. And then the Euro is waiting for this trough over the southern United States to get a lot stronger than the GFS was before it takes it out and out to sea. So you can see that is the main difference between the two models. The GFS is not giving this high pressure ridge much credit. It's also giving a lot more credit to the trough building over the South United States, picking this hurricane up and moving it out well before the Euro has it moving it out. So that's why on the Euro and on the National Hurricane Center's official forecast track, this hurricane makes it a lot farther west and a little southwest before it gets brought out into the ocean. I hope that makes sense for you guys. So now you can look at the two different models and kind of see the differences between the two, and you can kind of see what the National Hurricane Center is kind of fighting with when they're making their forecast. And that's why it's also very important to kind of realize, like, you know, that's why experience matters here, because they can look at a scenario and say, hey, you know, the GFS hasn't been very accurate on the storm thus far, but now that we have these conditions, the GFS tends to be more accurate than the Euro in these specific conditions. And that's what the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center do every day. They see the models and they say, okay, what's real and what's not, and they use their experience to determine that, which is just really cool. And for the most part, man, the guys are spot on. They get it right. Okay, so one of the things you could do to determine, you know, what's real and what's not is, instead of looking at the Euro and then looking at the GFS and then looking at the Icon and then looking at the UK Met and then blah, 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 the Google DeepMind, you could take a look here at polarwx.com/tropical. They have this thing called, I think it's called the Super Ensemble or something like that. And basically what it does is it takes all the ensembles from all the major players in the hurricane modeling, and it puts them together into one big ensemble. And what this kind of does in my mind is it takes, you know, like we were talking about before with the GFS, is letting it get, you know, not as far to the west, and the Euro makes it go a little west because the ridge is a little different, blah, 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 blah. It takes all those differences and all those runs and kind of makes a mean out of them and be like, okay, let's just take the average, right? That's what this black line is. This black line is the mean of all the modeling data that is available to human beings on the face of the planet, and draws a line with it, right? And right now it says that it's going to go south of Jamaica, turn, and just west of Kingston, strike the island of Jamaica through the eastern tip of Cuba, and then out to sea. Now, what's interesting about this image is it's currently not verifying, because the like I said before, the hurricane is currently moving quickly to the northwest, and to the northwest. And whether that's a wobble or not, I'm not sure. I'll be very interested to see when all of this modeling data gets updated with its new position, what it kind of sees. And there is another graphic on polarwx.com that's trending. So it kind of shows you how the forecasts have trended over time, like moved west, moved east. And that would be a very interesting graph to look at once we get new modeling data here in about an hour to see kind of what this storm is going to do with this new updated position. So thank you to polarwx.com for putting this graphic up. I really think it's really cool, and I've been really enjoying looking at it this hurricane season. All right, guys, well, that's all I have for you today on the update. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get all your notifications in the future. I really appreciate you watching. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, it means a lot to me. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.